The stars had been burning for 47 years, not with their natural light, but with the fires of war. Admiral Yuna stood at the great window of Station Meridian, watching another fleet of broken ships limp home from the front lines. Some of them were missing entire sections. Others were held together by emergency patches and desperate prayers. She had seen this sight so many times that it no longer made her feel anything. That emptiness scared her more than the war itself. Behind her, the War Council was gathering. Representatives from 32 species filled the circular chamber, their voices mixing into a worried hum. Some had traveled for weeks to attend this meeting. Others had simply appeared as holographic projections, their real bodies safe on distant worlds. Yuna envied those ones. Safety had become a distant memory for those who served on the front lines. High Counselor Taiho called the meeting to order. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His skin had turned the color of old paper, and his eyes had seen the birth and death of civilizations. When he spoke, everyone listened. "The situation grows worse," Taiho said. His voice was calm, but Yuna could hear the exhaustion beneath it. "The Varath Empire has taken the Kiran Nebula. Our forces there have been completely destroyed." A ripple of despair moved through the chamber. The Kiran Nebula had been their last major defensive position in the eastern sectors. Without it, 3 more systems lay exposed to Varath attack. "How many ships did we lose?" someone asked. 412, Yuna answered. She had memorized the number. She memorized all the numbers. Approximately 2 million soldiers. The exact count is still being determined. 2 million lives reduced to a number in a report. That was what this war had done to them. It had turned death into statistics and grief into routine. A delegate from the Morvai collective rose to speak. His species communicated partly through color changes in their skin, and right now he was flickering with shades of angry red. "We cannot continue like this. Every year we lose more ground. Every battle costs us more than we can afford. The Varath adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones. What would you suggest?" Another delegate challenged. "Surrender? The Varath do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They simply consume." This was true. The Varath Empire was not interested in territory or resources or political power. They wanted only one thing: the complete destruction of all other intelligent life. No one knew why. Some scientists theorized it was biological, a deep instinct that could not be reasoned with. Others believed it was religious, that the Varath saw other species as cosmic mistakes that needed to be corrected. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. There could be no peace with the Varath. There could only be victory or extinction. Yuna stepped forward. "I have reviewed our military projections for the next decade. At our current rate of losses, the coalition will collapse within 15 years. Possibly sooner if the Varath launch a major offensive." The chamber fell silent. Everyone had suspected this truth, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that could not be ignored. "There must be something we can do," Taiho said. "Some weapon we have not tried. Some strategy we have not considered." "We have tried everything," Yuna replied. "Pulse weapons, gravitational bombs, biological agents, psychological warfare. The Varath counter each approach within months. Their military is simply too adaptive, too flexible. They learn from every battle and never make the same mistake twice." "Then we need allies," the Morvai delegate said. "New species to join our cause. Fresh perspectives. Different ways of thinking. Every spacefaring civilization in our region has already joined the coalition," Yuna pointed out. "There is no one left to recruit." Another long silence filled the chamber. Then Taiho spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "There is one." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She knew immediately what he meant, and she could see from the reactions around the room that others did too. Some looked confused. Others looked horrified. A few looked intrigued despite themselves. The humans, Taiho continued. They achieved faster than light travel 18 years ago. They are technically eligible for coalition membership. The humans are under observation status, a delegate protested. They have been classified as too dangerous for contact. Their history is nothing but violence and destruction. They nearly destroyed their own planet, another added. Multiple times. With weapons they invented specifically for killing each other. They are primitive, a third voice chimed in. Their technology is generations behind ours. What could they possibly contribute to this war? Yuna had read the observation reports on humanity. Everyone in the military had. The reports described a species that had spent most of its existence fighting itself. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over things so trivial they defied explanation. Humans had invented weapons that could poison the very air they breathed. They had built bombs capable of erasing cities in seconds. They had committed acts of cruelty against their own kind that made even the Volrath look restrained. And yet, they had also shown remarkable creativity and resilience. When faced with problems, they found solutions that other species never considered. They adapted quickly, learned from failure, and never seemed to accept defeat as final. There was something almost frightening about their determination. "We are dying," Yuna said finally. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The Volrath will not stop until every coalition world is ash. We have tried honor. We have tried strategy. We have tried technology. All of it has failed. She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who had trusted her to keep them safe. Perhaps it is time to try something different. You cannot be serious, the Morve delegate said. Inviting humans into our war would be like releasing a plague to cure a fever. Even if they help us defeat the Volrath, what then? What happens when they turn their violence toward us? That is a problem for the future, Taiho replied. Right now, our problem is survival. If we do not stop the Volrath, there will be no future to worry about. The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made on both sides. Fears were expressed and dismissed and expressed again. But in the end, the mathematics of desperation won out. The coalition was dying. The humans represented an unknown variable, a wild card that could change everything. The vote was close. 17 in favor, 15 against. But it was enough. A message was sent into the void, aimed at a small blue planet on the edge of explored space. It was an invitation, a plea, and perhaps a warning, all wrapped into one. Humanity was about to join the galactic community, and nothing would ever be the same. The human ship arrived 3 weeks after the invitation was sent. It dropped out of hyperspace near Station Meridian with all the grace of a falling rock. Its engines sputtering and sparking as it slowed to a stop. "Admiral," Yuna watched from the observation deck as the vessel approached. She had seen thousands of ships in her long career, from elegant coalition cruisers to the terrifying war machines of the Volrath fleet. But she had never seen anything quite like this. The ship was called the Dauntless, according to the identification signal it broadcast. It was roughly the size of a medium coalition frigate, but that was where the similarities ended. The hull was a patchwork of different metals, some shining bright and others dark with age. Cables and pipes ran along the outside like exposed veins. Weapon turrets had been welded onto every available surface, pointing in all directions as if the ship expected to be attacked from everywhere at once. It was ugly. It was crude. And somehow, it was also deeply unsettling. "Their ship looks like it was built in a junkyard," one of Yuna's officers commented. "It probably was," Yuna replied. "Remember, They have only had faster-than-light travel for 18 years. They are still learning. But even as she said this, she noticed something strange. The Dauntless was ugly, yes, but it had made the journey from Earth to Station Meridian in 3 weeks. Coalition ships needed at least 5 weeks to cover the same distance. Either the humans had discovered some unknown shortcut through space, or their crude-looking engines were far more powerful than they appeared. She filed this observation away for later consideration. The Dauntless docked at Station Meridian's secondary port, and a few minutes later, its crew emerged. Una had assembled a formal welcoming committee. Diplomats, translators, military officers in their finest uniforms. They stood in neat rows, ready to greet humanity's representatives with the dignity such a historic moment deserved. The airlock opened, and 3 humans walked out. Una's first impression was that they were smaller than she expected. Humans stood about average height compared to most coalition species, with soft skin and no natural weapons. No claws, no armor plates, no venomous glands. From a biological perspective, they looked almost helpless. But then Una looked at their eyes, and her opinion changed. The human in front was a woman with short black hair and a face that seemed carved from stone. She wore a dark uniform with no decorations, practical boots, and a belt loaded with equipment that Una did not recognize. Her eyes scanned the welcoming committee with a cold efficiency that reminded Una of a predator sizing up potential prey. This was Captain Jiwoo Park. Behind her walked 2 more humans. Commander Seung-ho Kang was tall and lean, with a soldier's posture and hands that never strayed far from the weapon at his hip. Lieutenant Yoonji Beek was shorter and younger, carrying a computer tablet that she studied with intense focus. All 3 of them moved with the careful awareness of people who were used to dangerous situations. Admiral Una, Jiwoo said. Her voice was flat and businesslike. Thank you for the invitation. We came as quickly as we could. Una stepped forward. Captain Park, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I welcome you to Station Meridian. This is truly a historic occasion. 2 civilizations meeting for the first time, joining together in common cause. She had practiced this speech for days, crafting each word to convey respect and hope and the gravity of the moment. Jiwoo listened politely, but Una could tell she was not impressed. Let us skip the ceremony, Jiwoo said when Una finished. You did not invite us here to make friends. You invited us because you are losing a war and you need help. So let us talk about that. The diplomats behind Una exchanged shocked glances. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. There were protocols, rituals, cultural exchanges that could take weeks or even months. You did not simply jump straight to business like some kind of merchant haggling over prices. But Una found herself almost relieved by the directness. She was tired of protocols. She was tired of pretending that everything was fine while her people died by the millions. Very well, she said. Follow me. She led the humans to a secure briefing room deep inside the station. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing maps of the war zones, fleet positions, and casualty reports. As the humans entered, their eyes moved across the data with professional interest. The Volrath Empire, Una began. For 47 years, they have waged a war of extermination against the Coalition. They do not want territory or resources. They want us dead. All of us. Every species, every world, every trace that we ever existed. Why? Yoonji asked. It was the first time she had spoken, and her voice was surprisingly soft. We do not know. They refuse all communication. They do not take prisoners. They simply attack, destroy, and move on to the next target. Jiwoo nodded slowly. Tell me about your military situation. Una gestured, and the display changed to show the front lines. We have lost approximately 40% of our territory since the war began. Our fleet has been reduced by more than half. We developed new weapons, but the Velroth adapt to them within months. Every advantage we gain is temporary. What about their weaknesses? Seung-ho asked. They have none that we can exploit. Their ships are faster than ours. Their soldiers are stronger than ours. Their commanders are intelligent and flexible. They learn from every battle and never repeat their mistakes. Ji-woo studied the display for a long moment. Then she asked a question that confused everyone in the room. What are their supply lines like? Yuna blinked. Their supply lines? Food, water, fuel, ammunition. How do they keep their military supplied? Where do these resources come from? I do not understand the relevance. This is a military conflict, not an economic one. Ji-woo turned to look at Yuna with an expression that was almost pitying. Admiral, every military conflict is an economic one. Soldiers cannot fight without food. Ships cannot fly without fuel. Factories cannot produce weapons without raw materials. She paused. You have been fighting the Velroth fleet for 47 years. Have you ever once tried to starve them? The question hit Yuna like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. In 47 years of war, through thousands of strategies and millions of tactical decisions, no one had ever seriously considered targeting the Velroth supply chain. It was simply not done. War was fought between soldiers, not farmers. Between fleets, not cargo ships. Attacking civilian infrastructure was considered barbaric, a violation of every principle the coalition held dear. I see, Ji-woo said, reading the answer in Yuna's silence. You fight your wars with rules. Of course we do, Yuna replied, finally finding her voice. Without rules, war becomes mere slaughter. Ji-woo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Admiral, war is slaughter. The only question is whose blood gets spilled. She turned to her officers. I have seen enough. We will review all available data and present our analysis to your council. That could take months, Yuna protested. It will take 3 days, Ji-woo corrected her. We work fast. She walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. One more thing. Your observation reports on humanity. The ones that classified us as too dangerous for contact. Her smile widened slightly. You should know that we found those reports very amusing. Your scientists made us sound almost impressive. And with that, the humans left to begin their work. Yuna stood alone in the briefing room, surrounded by maps of a war she was losing, and wondered if she had just saved her civilization or doomed it. The human way for 3 days. The humans locked themselves inside a secure room with every piece of data the coalition could provide. They requested battle records, supply manifests, communication intercepts, planetary surveys, and dozens of other files that seemed to have no connection to military strategy. They asked for information about Velroth agriculture, their water systems, their entertainment, their religion. The coalition officers who delivered these files were confused. What did farming have to do with winning a war? What strategic value could be found in knowing what the Velroth did for fun? But they provided the information anyway. They had no other options. Outside the sealed room, the rest of the station waited nervously. Rumors spread through the corridors like wildfire. Some said the humans were planning a brilliant counterattack that would turn the tide of the war. Others whispered that they were secretly negotiating with the Velroth, planning to betray the coalition in exchange for their own safety. A few claimed to have heard strange sounds from inside the room, arguments, laughter, and once what sounded like singing. Admiral Yuna tried to maintain order, but even she found herself checking the sealed door more often than necessary. The fate of the galaxy was being decided in that room, and she was not allowed inside. On the 3rd day, The door finally opened. Lieutenant Yunji emerged first. She looked terrible. Dark circles hung under her eyes, and her hair was tangled and unwashed. But she was smiling, and that smile made Yuna's stomach twist with unease. It was the smile of someone who had discovered something terrible and was almost proud of it. "We are ready to present our findings," Yunji announced. The War Council assembled within the hour. Every delegate, every military commander, every scientific advisor who could be reached in time crowded into the main chamber. The air was thick with tension and hope and fear. Jiwoo stood at the center of the room, calm and composed despite the 3 days without sleep. Seungho and Yunji flanked her, holding data tablets loaded with information. "Thank you all for coming," Jiwoo began. "We have completed our analysis of the Velrith Empire and the current state of your war. We have also developed a strategy that we believe will end this conflict quickly and permanently." "How quickly?" Counselor Taiho asked. "If everything goes according to plan, the Velrith will surrender within hours of our operation beginning." A wave of disbelief swept through the chamber. Hours? The war had been raging for 47 years. Countless lives had been lost. Entire civilizations had been brought to the edge of extinction. And this human woman was claiming she could end it in hours? "That is impossible," Admiral Yuna said. "The Velrith fleet alone would take years to defeat. Their defenses are too strong, their forces too numerous." "You are absolutely right," Jiwoo agreed. "If we attack their fleet, we will lose. The Velrith military is superior to anything the coalition can field, even with human assistance." She paused. "So we will not attack their fleet. Then what will you attack?" The Morvi delegate demanded. Yunji stepped forward and activated a holographic display. It showed a detailed map of Velrith space, but not the military installations that usually dominated such maps. Instead, it highlighted agricultural planets, water treatment facilities, power generation stations, and communication networks. "The Velrith Empire has 17 habitable worlds," Yunji explained. "Of these, only 3 are heavily developed. The rest serve specific functions: food production, resource extraction, industrial manufacturing. Their civilization is highly specialized and interdependent. Each world relies on the others to survive." "This is basic economic information," Yuna said impatiently. "What is your point?" "The point," Jiwoo said, "is that you have been attacking the Velrith where they are strongest. Their military is powerful because they have poured resources into it for generations. But their civilian infrastructure is weak, vulnerable, almost completely undefended." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Yuna felt something cold settle in her chest as she began to understand what the humans were suggesting. "You want us to attack civilians," she said. "Farmers, workers, families. I want you to attack food supplies, water treatment systems, and communication networks," Jiwoo corrected. "What happens to the people who depend on those systems is a secondary concern." "Secondary concern?" The Marve delegate's skin flushed with colors of outrage. "You are talking about killing millions of non-combatants. I am talking about ending a war that has already killed trillions," Jiwoo replied calmly. "The Velrith have shown no mercy to your civilians. Your children, your elderly, your innocent have all been slaughtered without hesitation. And you have responded by following rules that they do not respect. You have been fighting with honor against an enemy that has none." She gestured, and the display changed to show a timeline of Velrith attacks. Planet after planet appeared, each one marked with casualty figures that climbed into the billions. "These are your dead," Jiwoo continued. "These are the people who died while you fought fairly, while you respected boundaries and followed protocols, while you refused to do what was necessary because it felt wrong." Her voice hardened. "How many more are you willing to sacrifice for your principles?" Commander Seungho stepped forward. Our plan has 3 phases. First, we disable their communication systems using targeted electronic attacks. This will prevent them from coordinating a response. Second, we deploy agents to contaminate their agricultural worlds with a biological compound that will destroy their crops within days. Third, we send a message to their leadership, explaining exactly what we have done and offering them one chance to surrender. And if they do not surrender? Taiho asked quietly. Then we target their water supply next, Shunho replied. Then their power systems. Then their medical facilities. We continue until they have nothing left, or until they agree to stop fighting. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, some demanding that the humans be arrested, others arguing that desperate times required desperate measures. Accusations of war crimes mixed with calculations of potential casualties. The carefully maintained order of the coalition was crumbling under the weight of an impossible choice. Admiral Yuna stood silent through it all, her mind racing. Everything the humans proposed violated every principle she had sworn to uphold. It was brutal. It was cruel. It was everything the coalition claimed to stand against. But it would work. She could see it now, with terrible clarity. The Velrith military was powerful because it was supported by a civilization that fed it, supplied it, maintained it. Take away that support, and the military would collapse like a building without a foundation. It would not matter how many ships they had or how strong their soldiers were. Hungry soldiers could not fight. Thirsty soldiers could not march. An empire without infrastructure was just a collection of people waiting to die. The humans had found the weakness that 47 years of coalition warfare had missed. Not because they were smarter or more advanced, but because they were willing to look at options that the coalition had never considered. Because they were willing to be monsters. This is not war, the Marvai delegate was saying. This is genocide. No, Jiwoo replied. Genocide is what the Velrith are doing to you. This is survival. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. You invited us here because you were desperate. Because your civilized methods were failing. Because you needed someone willing to do what you could not. She spread her hands. Well, here we are. This is what humanity offers. This is how we fight. This is how we win. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The only question is whether you want to survive badly enough to let us. The vote took 6 hours. There were speeches and arguments and tears. Some delegates left the chamber rather than participate. Others demanded conditions and limitations that Jiwoo refused to accept. In the end, the result was the same as before. A narrow majority in favor, with many abstaining or voting against. It was not a proud moment for the coalition. It was not a moment anyone would want to remember, but it was enough. The operation was approved. The humans would have their war, and the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. 5 hours. The operation began at exactly 600 hours. Coalition Standard Time. 12 small ships slipped away from Station Meridian and vanished into the darkness between stars. They were not warships. They carried no heavy weapons, no armor plating, no soldiers ready for battle. To anyone watching, they looked like simple cargo vessels making routine deliveries. This was intentional. Captain Jiwoo commanded the operation from the bridge of the Dauntless, which remained hidden in a debris field at the edge of Velrith space. Around her, a team of human specialists monitored dozens of screens showing data from across the Empire. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, mapping communication networks, identifying weak points, and planting the seeds of chaos throughout Velrith civilization. Now, it was time to let those seeds grow. Phase 1, Jiwoo said calmly. Begin. 2,000 light-years away, a small device activated inside a Velrith communication satellite. It had been placed there 3 days ago by a human agent who had posed as a maintenance worker. The device was simple, a transmitter loaded with corrupted code, designed to spread through any system it touched. The satellite received the code and passed it on to the next satellite in the network. Within seconds, the corruption was spreading faster than any biological plague could dream of. It jumped from satellite to satellite, from station to station, from the military command center to the civilian broadcast networks. Every system it touched became infected, and every infected system spread the disease further. At 623 hours. The Velrith Empire went silent. Their military commanders could no longer speak to their fleets. Their government could not issue orders to their armies. Their people could not call for help or warn each other of what was coming. An entire civilization, spanning 17 worlds, was suddenly blind, deaf, and mute. Admiral Yuna watched from Station Meridian as the reports came in. She had seen many things in her long military career, but nothing like this. Without firing a single shot, the humans had crippled the Velroth war machine more effectively than 47 years of conventional warfare. Phase 2, Jiwoo announced. Execute. On 5 agricultural worlds scattered across Velroth space, human agents opened sealed containers and released their contents into the wind. The containers held a biological compound that the humans called Agent Grey. It was not poisonous to animals or people. It simply made plants unable to process nutrients from the soil. Within hours, every field, every greenhouse, every food-producing facility on those 5 worlds would begin to wither. The Velroth stored food reserves for exactly 4 weeks. After that, they would begin to starve. Reports of the crop failures reached the Velroth High Command within the hour, carried by desperate messengers who had no other way to communicate. The military leaders gathered in their underground bunker beneath the capital city, trying to understand what was happening. They had fought the coalition for generations and had never seen anything like this. Attacks came from ships, from soldiers, from weapons they could see and counter. This invisible destruction terrified them in ways that open battle never had. At 712 hours. The agricultural failures were confirmed across all 5 targeted worlds. Commander Seung-ho monitored the Velroth response from his position aboard one of the stealth ships. They are attempting to organize ground forces for defense, he reported. But without communications, their coordination is falling apart. Regional commanders are acting independently, often contradicting each other. As expected, Jiwoo replied. Proceed to Phase 3. The final phase was the simplest and the most terrifying. Deep beneath the Velroth capital, in the most secure bunker ever constructed, the High Council of the Empire was meeting to discuss their response to the crisis. They believed themselves safe. Their bunker was protected by meters of reinforced metal and stone. It had its own power supply, its own water recycling system, its own air filtration network. They could survive for years without any contact with the surface. They did not know that a human agent had visited the bunker 6 months ago, posing as an engineer hired to upgrade the ventilation system. The agent had installed several small modifications that went unnoticed by security. These modifications did nothing harmful. They simply allowed certain commands to be received from outside. At 834 hours, those commands were sent. The air filtration system did not shut down. It did not release poison or gas. Instead, it simply began projecting a message onto the walls of every room in the bunker. The message was written in perfect Velroth script, and it said, "We are already inside. Your communications are gone. Your food supplies are dying. Your military cannot coordinate. Your people are alone and afraid. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, your water treatment facilities will be next. Then your power systems. Then your hospitals. We will take everything from you, piece by piece, until there is nothing left. You have fought the coalition for 47 years and never lost. But you have never fought humanity. This is your only warning. The message was followed by detailed evidence of everything the humans had done, everything they were capable of doing, and everything they would do if the war continued. It included technical specifications showing that the Velroth had no defense against these methods. It included projections of casualties that climbed into the billions, and it included one final line, added by Jiwoo herself. We do not want to destroy you, but we will if we must. The choice is yours. For 23 minutes, the Velroth High Council debated. Some wanted to fight, to launch everything they had against the coalition in one final desperate attack. Others argued for negotiation, for trying to buy time to develop countermeasures. A few simply sat in silence, staring at the messages on the walls and wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. In the end, it was the Emperor himself who made the decision. He was old enough to remember the beginning of the war, old enough to have ordered the deaths of countless billions. He had always believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. The strong survived, and the weak were eliminated. It was simple. It was clean. It was the way things had always been. But looking at the evidence before him, he understood something that changed everything. The Velroth were not fighting a weak enemy that could be overwhelmed with superior force. They were fighting an enemy that did not care about strength. An enemy that would destroy everything the Velroth had built without ever engaging their military in battle. The humans had not come to win the war. They had come to make war itself impossible. At 901 hours. Exactly 4 hours and 47 minutes after the operation began, the Velroth Emperor broadcast his unconditional surrender to every ship in his fleet. The message had to be delivered by courier ships since the communication networks were still down. It took several more hours for the news to reach all Velroth forces. But by the end of the day, every Velroth weapon had been powered down. Every Velroth ship had stopped in place, and every Velroth soldier had laid down their arms. 40-7 years of war. Trillions of deaths. Thousands of destroyed worlds. Ended in 5 hours. Captain Jiwoo watched the surrender confirmation scroll across her screen. Around her, the bridge crew was silent. There was no celebration, no cheering, no expressions of triumph. They had done what they came to do. They had won a war that could not be won. Lieutenant Yoonji approached her captain with a data tablet. Final tally, she said quietly. 4 hours and 47 minutes from first strike to surrender. 0 combat casualties on our side. Estimated Velroth military casualties, 0. Estimated Velroth civilian casualties from the agricultural attack, pending, but projected to be minimal if food aid is provided quickly. Jiwoo nodded. Make sure that food aid is arranged. I do not want anyone starving because of what we did today. Already done, Yoonji confirmed. Coalition relief ships are being prepared now. Good. Jiwoo leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Then, we are finished here. Captain? Yoonji hesitated. What do we tell them? When they ask how we did it? Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired. We tell them the truth. We tell them that we found their weakness and exploited it. We tell them that we did things they would never do. She opened her eyes. And then we let them decide what that means. The price of victory, the war, was over. For the first time in 47 years, the guns fell silent across the galaxy. Ships that had known nothing but combat returned to ports they barely recognized. Soldiers who had spent their entire lives fighting struggled to remember what peace felt like. On 1,000 worlds, people looked up at skies that were no longer filled with the fire of battle and wondered. What came next? The coalition declared a week of celebration. There were parades and ceremonies and speeches praising the courage of those who had sacrificed so much. The names of fallen heroes were read aloud in public squares. Monuments were planned for the dead. Children who had grown up hiding in bunkers played in the open air for the first time in their lives died. But beneath the joy, there was something else. Something that no one wanted to talk about, but everyone could feel. A quiet unease that spread through the celebrating crowds like a cold wind. The war had been won. But the way it had been won changed everything. Admiral Yuna found Captain Jiwoo alone on an observation deck, high above Station Meridian. The human woman stood motionless at the great window, staring out at the stars with an expression that Yuna could not read. She had refused all invitations to the victory celebrations. She had declined medals, honors, and interviews. For the past week, she had simply stayed here, watching the void. "Captain Park," Yuna said, approaching carefully. "May I join you?" Jiwoo nodded without turning around. "It is a free station, Admiral. Stand where you like." Yuna moved to stand beside her at the window. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable in a strange way, like the quiet between old friends who had run out of things to say. "The Coalition Council has been discussing the future," Yuna finally said. "There is talk of offering humanity a permanent seat. Full membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." "I have heard," Jiwoo replied. "I have also heard that many delegates are voting against it. They are afraid of us." Yuna did not deny this. She could not. In the weeks since the Vorath surrender, she had seen how people looked at the humans. There was gratitude, yes, but there was also fear. The same fear that parents feel when they realize their child has learned something dangerous. The same fear that prey feels when it discovers a new predator in its territory. Can you blame them? Yuna asked. "You did in 5 hours what our combined military could not do in 47 years. You brought an entire empire to its knees without fighting a single battle. That kind of power is frightening." "It is not power," Jiwoo said quietly. "It is willingness." "What do you mean?" Jiwoo turned to face Yuna for the first time. Up close, the Admiral could see how tired the human woman looked. There were new lines around her eyes, new shadows in her expression. Whatever burden she carried, it was heavier than simple exhaustion. "Your civilization had the technology to do what we did," Jiwoo explained. "Your scientists could have designed the communication virus. Your biologists could have created the crop-killing agent. Your engineers could have built the delivery systems. You had everything you needed except one thing." "What?" "The willingness to use it." Jiwoo turned back to the window. "Your people are kind, Admiral. You believe in rules and honor and fair play. You believe that there are lines that should never be crossed, even in war. These beliefs are good. They are what separates civilization from chaos." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was heavy with something that might have been grief. "But the Velrath did not share your beliefs. They had no lines, no limits, no restrictions on what they would do to destroy you. And so your kindness became a weakness. Your honor became a chain. Your rules let them kill trillions while you fought with one hand tied behind your back." "So you untied our hands," Yuna said slowly. "No," Jiwoo shook her head. "We did what you could not do yourself. We became the monsters you needed. We crossed the lines that you could not cross. We carried the guilt so you did not have to." The words hung in the air between them. Yuna felt something shift in her understanding, like a puzzle piece falling into place. She had assumed that the humans were proud of what they had done. She had imagined them celebrating their victory, boasting about their cleverness, reveling in the fear they had inspired. But looking at Jiwoo now, she saw none of that. She saw only a woman who had done something terrible and was trying to live with the weight of it. "Do you regret it?" Yuna asked. Every day for the rest of my life, Jiwoo replied without hesitation. What we did was necessary. I believe that. But necessary and good are not the same thing. We threatened to starve billions of people to death. We terrorized civilians who had no part in the war. We showed the Velrith that we were willing to be worse than them, more cruel than them, more monstrous than them. Her voice cracked slightly. That is not something to be proud of. But you saved us. You saved trillions of lives. Yes, and I damn my own soul to do it. Jiwoo smiled, but it was a sad smile, filled with old pain. Do you know why humans fight the way we do, Admiral? It is not because we are especially smart or especially strong. It is because we have practice. We have been fighting each other since before we had names. We have committed every atrocity that can be imagined, and some that cannot. We have poisoned our own rivers, burned our own cities, slaughtered our own children. She gestured at the stars outside the window. Everything we did to the Velrith, we learned by doing it to ourselves first. The crop-killing agent? Based on chemicals we used in our own wars centuries ago. The communication virus? Designed from attacks we used against our own governments. The psychological warfare? We have been perfecting that against each other since we learned to speak. Yuna listened in silence, feeling the weight of every word. Your observation report said we were too dangerous to contact, Jiwoo continued. They were right. We are dangerous. We are perhaps the most dangerous species in this galaxy, not because of what we can do to others, but because of what we have already done to ourselves. We know the full depth of cruelty that intelligent beings are capable of, because we have experienced it firsthand. We have been both the victims and the perpetrators of every horror. She turned to face Yuna again, and this time the Admiral saw something in her eyes that she had not expected. Not pride or arrogance or satisfaction. Just weariness and a deep, abiding sorrow. You wanted monsters to fight your war, Jiwoo said. And you found them. We won your war for you. We saved your civilization. We gave you peace. She walked past Yuna toward the door. Now you have to live in a galaxy with us. And you have to decide whether the price was worth paying. She paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. I hope it was, Admiral. I truly do. Because we can never take back what we did. And neither can you. Then she was gone, leaving Yuna alone with the stars and a victory that tasted like ashes dot in the years that followed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. The Velrith Empire was disbanded and its people scattered, too broken to ever threaten anyone again. The coalition expanded, welcoming new members and building new alliances. Peace held, fragile but real, across worlds that had known nothing but war. And humanity took its place among the stars. They were welcomed as heroes by some and feared as demons by others. Parents told their children stories about the humans who had ended the Great War, some as bedtime stories of courage, and some as warnings of what happens when civilized beings forget their principles. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. Captain Jiwoo Park returned to Earth and never spoke publicly about the war again. She lived quietly, far from the celebrations and the monuments, carrying the weight of what she had done until the day she died. Her crew scattered across the galaxy, some becoming diplomats, others becoming teachers, a few simply disappearing into the vast emptiness of space. But the lesson they had taught remained. A lesson written in the stars for anyone who cared to read it. War is not a game. It is not noble or glorious or clean. It is suffering and death and choices that haunt you forever. The Coalition had learned this lesson the gentle way, by watching someone else pay the price. They would not forget it. And humanity? Humanity had known this truth all along. It was carved into their history, branded into their souls, passed down through generations of blood and fire. They were the monsters the galaxy needed. And now the galaxy would have to decide what that meant. The stars continued to burn, cold and distant and eternal. But for the first time in 47 years, they burned with light alone. The fires of war had finally gone out.